Well, I want to thank all of you for attending the support roundtable on the crisis facing Afghan women and girls under the Taliban's oppressive rule in Afghanistan. I want to thank my dear friend, Roya Romani, who served her country very well and is a dear friend of mine. And also Miss Adia Amri and Hanafi Garal for joining us here today. It's important that we have this discussion on Afghanistan women, led by Afghan women. I've watched with great concern as the Taliban has continued to restrict the rights of women and girls in Afghanistan since the collapse in August of 2021. I've heard from many women who have witnessed the barbaric acts of the Taliban firsthand. Since the Taliban's takeover, nearly 20 years of progress in women's rights have been erased. The Taliban has issued more than 30 edicts aimed at severely limiting women's freedoms. Afghanistan is the only country in the world where girls are banned from attending school above the 6th grade, the only country in the world. Taliban has also banned Afghan women from working for NGOs. A concern of mine, will have Samantha Power, USAID, testify this afternoon. I'm going to ask her about this. But also prohibited from working at the United Nations. They're inhibited the delivery of humanitarian aid, which is desperately needed by the women in Afghanistan. Afghan women and girls are not allowed to go to public parks. They're required to cover their faces in public and must be escorted by a male chaperone, a model, whenever they leave the house. The Taliban has essentially banned women from public life and intend to permanently place all women on house arrest. Quite frankly, they're treated like property. Moreover, in addition to losing their rights and freedoms, women and girls who disobey the Taliban's edicts have been flogged, whipped, stoned, tortured, and killed. Afghan women are forced into marriages with Taliban fighters and face constant threat of sexual assault. We continue to work to evacuate at-risk Afghan allies, especially women and children from Afghanistan, because they're simply not safe. During the fall of Kabul, there was so much chaos. It seemed every congressional office turned into its very own State Department. Members were helping everyone they could evacuate. I know I helped Roya, we helped your family, 16 family members. The women especially were desperate to save the lives of their children and themselves from the Taliban. We all remember the photos of the mothers attempting to throw their children over barbed wire fences into the arms of the US military. One group of children, I remember very distinctly, music students with the Afghanistan National Institute of Music waited outside the gates of the airport for 17 hours while I and other members made desperate high-level calls to try to secure their passage to the airport and onto an evacuating plane. However, they never made it inside the airport that day. I'd always wondered what had happened to them. And so I was at a Grammys on the Hill award ceremony, and next to me was a man from Kabul who had a music school in Portugal. And I remember that these girls had Portuguese visas. And then I put the two together and asked him if this was his school, were these his girls? And he said, yes. I said, are they safe? He said, yes. And it was amazing, amazing epiphany. And Jessica Lustig, who's here, I reconnected with her. She's here today in the audience on behalf of the National Institute of Music, and thank you for being here as well. We are making plans now to have the girls and some come and play at the Kennedy Center to play their Afghanistan cultural music, and they have hopes of one day returning to their country. I'm so proud of them, and they are rebuilding that school. And I want to thank you, Jessica, and everyone else who worked so tirelessly to get people out. Not only the Afghan partners, interpreters, Americans, but especially the women and children during this withdrawal, because to be left behind, to go back to Sharia law that they never lived under before, is a truly a nightmare of an experience. For every success story, there are more horror stories of women and girls unable to escape and now live under Taliban rule. This committee will do everything in its power to help Afghan women and girls to hold Taliban accountable for its human rights abuses. So I look forward to hearing from our distinguished guest here today. It's going to be a great conversation. I want to thank all of you for being here. And with that, I recognize the ranking member for his remarks.